Good evening, everyone. It's 7 o'clock. This is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not intended to be considered a public community meeting. There is a time for public participation as evidenced on the agenda during the meeting, and we'll go ahead and begin. Actually, before we begin, obviously, Mr. Kinsey is not here. You have the B team running the show. I am not the parliamentarian that Mr. Kinsey is, so you will all have to bear with me, and we'll roll with it. All right. So I'd like to call the meeting to order, and if you would go ahead and call roll.
Sure. Mrs. Anderson?
Here.
Mrs. Dawn?
Here.
Mr. Kinsey? Mr. Price?
Here.
Dr. Pryor?
Present.
4 present, 1 absent.
Would you join me in the pledge, please? Mr. Gotham, start us off with the treasurer's report.
Okay. My first recommendation is approval of July 17, 2025 board minutes.
So moved.
Second. Dr. Pryor and Mrs. Anderson. Anyone have comments?
Nope.
All right, call the roll.
Mrs. Anderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Dawn?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Dr. Pryor?
Yes.
4 yeses. My second recommendation is approval of the treasurer's report for the month of July 2025.
So moved.
Second. Again, Dr. Pryor and Mrs. Anderson.
So this is only 1 month of the fiscal year. It's about 8% over. We are over on revenue, so we're getting more revenues than we should. Our expenditures are in line. The revenues are higher because we're getting tax advances. So they'll come in July, we'll get some in August, and then we won't get anything until February. So that's why the revenues look higher than they should be. They'll even out. The expenditures are in line. And then some of the other revenues like tuition, we get kindergarten tuition at the beginning of the year. So that's why.
Okay. Anyone have questions?
Nope.
All right, please call the roll.
Mrs. Dawn,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Dr. Pryor,
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson.
Yes.
4 yeses. The next one is not a recommendation. I'm required by Ohio law to, if you invest in commercial paper, I'm required to provide an annual report. The report lists all the commercial paper we invested in and the interest earnings. We had a few investment in commercial paper, and we got $36,000 in investment earnings from commercial paper. Commercial paper is more risky investment, the highest risky investment that we can take. It's still not risky. It's highest rated corporate bonds. It's private. Everything else has to be government bonds. So that's the only difference. But they are relatively low risk securities, but still I'm required to report it.
Pretty routine. Anyone have questions? All right, go ahead and call the roll.
This is the only.
Not for approval.
Yeah. The next one is recommendation for approval of a then and now to Riddle All-American Sports Corp. For $4,693.89.
So moved.
Second. Questions?
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Dr. Pryor,
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Dawn.
Yes.
4 yeses.
All right, that brings us to correspondence. I'm going to kick us off with correspondence. We did receive a number of emails in the last 24 hours, and by a number, I'd say 5 or 6. I think we all probably received the same emails. I don't think any of them were just to one or the other. These emails stemmed from primarily questions regarding the Parents' Bill of Rights, Policy 5780. So I kind of want to start, the majority of the emails, folks were upset, and I think a large reason that folks were upset is that they had some bad information that's floating around out in the community. So I'm going to kind of set the record straight on a few things, and then maybe take us back in time to when we adopted this policy in April, just to kind of recap, and maybe that'll answer a lot of the questions that we received via email. So 5780, we discussed in depth. The second read was during the April 10th meeting. Prior to that April 10th meeting, we had the first read, and in between the first and second read, we did hear quite a bit from the community. Some of the folks I see in here stood at the podium and discussed. We met with the administrators, we met with the teachers union, and we were pretty diligent, I think, and put a lot of thought into the wording that goes into that policy. So a number of the folks that spoke at that time, particularly the folks that spoke at our meetings, requested further clarity about some of the terms that were used in the Parents' Bill of Rights law. Specifically, the term, and I don't want to misquote here, the term, sexual content is used in the law and isn't really defined. And so to have a policy about sexual content, that what is sexual content, we agreed with all of you, and so we did put that into policy and define that. A number of the emails we received kind of misdefined what that is, and so if folks aren't understanding how that term was defined, I can see why they would think that it was very ambiguous or confusing. So I'm going to remind folks, at the time in 57, or in the policy, 5780, we defined sexuality content as including, it's longer than this, but including sexual concepts, inherently private, this is in parentheses, inherently private sexual acts or sexual intercourse in any form, okay? So I've seen things floating around, or some of the emails referenced just sexual content or inherently sexual content. The important word is inherently private sexual content, and how I guess in my simple mind think of that is, if something is inherently private, it would be if you did it on a park bench, would an officer arrest you for it? If that is the case, it's a behind closed doors thing. If you could do it on a park bench and not be arrested for it, hugging, kissing, some pretty decent making out, as us old folks would call it, not inherently private, as folks do that in a non-private setting, okay? So I think that word was omitted from a lot of the understanding that the community had, and I think that's an important word, all right? So beyond that, are books being banned for containing those things? No. That's the difference is, if a book in our high school library contains inherently private sexual acts, it just means that in order to check out that book, they have to have a parental thumbs up. We provided a very easy way for parents to do that at the beginning of the school year, and if you want to give your student carte blanche access to every single book in that library, you can do so, and about 75% of folks so far that have filled out the form have done that. Yep, my kid is ready to receive that kind of information. I'm good with it. You don't need to ask. I've given my thumbs up. About 25% of parents so far have said, prior to my child accessing that kind of content, I would like to know about it, either to say, yep, that sounds good, or nope, absolutely not, that is not in line with our values, or I'd like to review the material or have a discussion with my child prior to them accessing those materials. So that's the first thing. The second thing that I've seen folks have brought to our attention is that they are under the impression that the school board has closed the high school library indefinitely. That is not accurate. The school board has not closed the library indefinitely. I'm going to kick it to you, Dr. Kozad, to kind of explain what's happening at the high school library.
Sure. So in the spring, we met with our school librarian and tried to get a plan of attack in order to comply with this policy. Plan of attack was complied or was put together, and then summer happened, so people went on summer break. And then folks came back on Monday of this week, and as with other school districts, just like other school districts, there's quite a few meetings that are going on, things to do to get ready for the school year. And so met again with the high school librarian and working on that plan of reviewing the materials in the high school library and trying to see which books are complying with it and what books, materials do not, and going through that list. And so it's going to take a little time in order to start on that process. And so it would be really difficult to tell this person to do that and then also supervise students in the library while you're trying to review those materials and go through those materials. So trying to having a delayed opening of the high school library so that there's an opportunity to start that review process, and as we've done in Final Forms, which is the software that we use for parents to sign off on various forms throughout the school district, there is an opt-in or opt-out of that. And so even if students are saying, no, I don't want my student to have access to that, there's a little caveat to that there's quite a few books in the high school library, and it's going to take a little time in order to review all those books. But we're going to start on that process, and once we have reviewed, have a solid start to that, then we'll have that library open. And so we want to have a really solid start to developing and reviewing those materials. But again, to be fair to the librarian, we can't really open on day one and then have our supervising students and then also trying to review these materials as we just came back to school on Monday. And like I said, we have various meetings, first day of school, things are going on. That's kind of where we're at right now with the delayed opening of the high school library.
Awesome.
On that real quickly here, I as a school board member was not aware. And so I was essentially blindsided by this assertion that the school library is closed, and really quite troubled by that. And especially that it's not really true at all that the school board has mandated that the library is closed. So can you elaborate a little bit on how this came about, because I didn't know.
So again, the school board puts policy in place, and it's my job to implement that policy, and that's what I think is the best path forward in order to ensure that at this point students don't have access to all of those materials at the high school level as the board policy would read. And so the board asked me to implement this policy with fidelity and to make sure it is followed. And it's in my opinion that at this point for the high school library, that's the best way to start at this point, is to have a delayed opening of the high school library.
Okay. So I guess where I'm troubled is that, again, there was input provided on Final Forms. And in particular, it's straightforward if it's a yes. So there's really not much point in reading that one. Can y'all hear me back there? I guess this doesn't broadcast anyhow, so. You cannot hear it well. Okay. I'll try to speak a little louder. Okay, the no is I do not give permission to my child to check out or be provided books known to contain sexuality content as defined above. Okay, so if we stop there, I could allow that there may be some period of time by which the library needs to go and review what's there. However, there was a very carefully inserted parenthetical statement there. I understand that the school is in the process of separating out the sexuality content as defined by board policy from the general reading material in order to meet the board's policy requirements. It cannot guarantee that all titles have been identified. So that to me means that we were going to proceed as normal, and during this, that these books were going to be reviewed. And so I don't understand, I don't really accept that this library is closed. That's my position as a board member. Again, I was surprised and displeased to find out about that.
I think there's certainly been a community misunderstanding that the board closed the library. We didn't. We adopted the policy, and the administration decided, you know what, we do need to close for a week or two to get started, which I wasn't aware of either, so it was certainly a surprise to us. Do you think it'll, obviously it's not going to be all done. Do you think it'll be closed for like a long time, or do you have any ideas?
It's going to be open as soon as possible.
Okay, okay.
So how is it that the middle school could instantly be open where there have been books previously identified that violated the sexuality content or gender identity criteria? And as far as I know, today the middle school library was open. And so I don't understand why the high school is not. I don't know if that's per recommendation of the high school librarian, principal, a together made recommendation, but I just see a disconnect with the high school, especially in light of this form, which is specific to the high school, for the steps that have been taken to essentially close it until further notice, because there is no distinct date, even we just talked about right now. So
I think there's a difference in when implementing something that is black and white, which this policy is at the middle school, it's an all or none, versus giving the high school librarian and staff time to put, it's not just about reviewing books. It's about putting processes in place for them to be able to see which parents have checked which box and what do we do when a parent wants to be notified first, and how are we going to do that? How are we going to document it? It's not just about, the high school has a very different task than the middle school does.
but again,
So I think that's perfectly,
but they also had a caveat where it stated that there was a process that's being gone through.
sure.
So therefore, for lack of a better saying, that was the get out of jail free card, if you want to call it that. And I just don't accept that the library is closed. I think it should open tomorrow. And it should be a continuing process to review these books. You can clap, but I'm not saying that the books that violate these criteria are just going to get a pass either, So that's just where I'm at on this. And those words mean, that saying that words mean things. And the fact that we put that parenthetical statement in there, or at least it went in, and I saw that, and I was satisfied with that. And then to see this happen, on the first day of school. But I'm also troubled with the community. I think the community knew full well, and they saved it up for the night before school to start, to turn it into a spectacle, into posture, and to make a stand in a very, I guess, public way that is quite absurd. So I see both sides, not necessarily in a good way here.
All right, so I'm going to kind of keep going here. Understand what you're saying, Kevin. I personally don't take exception to our, administrators making choices with how to use their staff and how to use their staff's time. I'm okay with that, within reason, and I think that making those decisions is what we ask them to do. Now, I think understanding the magnitude of a delayed opening of the library is important. So I would ask you, are we talking days and weeks? Are we talking months on end?
Days and weeks.
So that was my understanding as well. So
Yep.
I trust you all to handle that. There are some other elements to some of the emails we received that I think, again, are some misconceptions about what's going on. Some folks are under the impression that individual classroom teachers have been directed to remove their classroom libraries. That is not true. I don't know if you want to speak to that, or you want?
Sure. So again, more specifically, high school teachers, they have classroom libraries where they have their own personal library of books, and so those are things that they choose to bring in on their own. And so as long as those books comply with the policy just like they would in the library, then they're more than welcome to have those libraries, those personal classroom libraries in their classroom.
And am I correct in saying that it's not that you can't have these kind of books and you can't have these kind of books. It's that if any of your collection contains these kind of topics, before you hand it to a kid, you have to make sure that their parents have given that the thumbs up.
Would that look like maybe a teacher publishing the list of books that's in their classroom and getting a yes or no like we do for movies at lower grade levels?
Well, I think similar to the library, that those books would be separated, and so in order to student have access to those books, they would have to have that permission
Right.
form signed out. We could
But
use
if
the same
that
permission.
happened, those classroom libraries could continue.
Yeah, sure, we can use the same permission slip at the library, that if they're allowed to have access to it in the library, they're allowed to have access to it in the classroom library. But just like in the high school library, those books are going to be separated, so those books would have to be separated in the classroom library.
Can the teachers look on final forms and see which of their students have full access to the library and which aren't supposed to have explicit sexual content?
They will have we'll get that
Okay.
list to them.
Okay.
We're in day one of the school
Right,
year, so
okay.
they have not been given that list, just because it's still incomplete.
Okay.
There's still 200 or so plus people that have not filled out their final forms of that part of the final forms.
Okay.
Yeah, that list will be
So,
given to
okay.
them.
So
Yep.
we can leave it up to the teacher if they want to comply and make their collection compliant and get permission, totally fine. Or they can also choose not to have a collection
Sure.
if it's too much of a burden,
That's
right?
their personal choice.
Personal choice.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Hopefully that cleared up some of the, I think, topics that were floating around and that we received some correspondence on. Is there anything else you wanted to bring up on that topic, Dr. Kozad?
I got a call from one of our former teachers who says she talked to a bunch of our teachers, and she said a lot of them are confused on, I know we tried real hard for the definition of, sexual content, the inherently private sexual acts, but this teacher explained that some teachers thought it might mean hand-holding, some thought it meant kissing, and like a parent might think that, and so everyone was so confused, and so they'd like us to define it better. So we could think about that,
Yeah.
but,
I think it's pretty
It's-
clear.
yes.
I
mean,
think it's clear, and I
it's
think it was
clear.
made clear, and I
Yeah.
think I believe Dr. Cosette has conveyed that appropriately to the teacher, so I don't think there's really a good excuse to not know. And as I communicated with one parent last night, you can disagree with the policy, by all means. You had opportunities while that policy was being formulated. There was public comment, there was opportunity to come out and speak, to email us and everything else, and you can continue to disagree with it. No policy is in concrete. So you can continue to request a change on that. But to say, though, that our teachers, our librarians, our media specialists aren't aware of the policy is really doesn't float very well.
So I fully understand. So again, trying to make this as clear as possible, we tried to clarify it beyond what the law said, because the law was virtually had no definition included. But again, any of you can disagree, but inherently private to me means if you would get arrested for doing it on a park bench, then maybe parents need to know before we provide that to their children. And
To their minor
and
children, yes.
I'm okay with that definition. There's always going to be some little thing, though, that, what if it says this and it mentions it for 3 words? And that's where I say, you know what, come back, bring it to the attention of your administrator, and we'll work through things case by case. No words that we put on this policy are going to be 100% black and white for every individual specific scenario. We are doing our best to make it as clear as possible so folks aren't afraid to, have books in their classroom or access them.
To beat a dead horse, I just want to reiterate, I believe the library should be open immediately, starting tomorrow. But I also believe this community, and possibly even some of our teachers, are using this as an opportunity to stir the pot because they fundamentally disagree with the policy, and that's unacceptable.
So I would just say the board had created the policy, and as a superintendent, you have empowered me to administer and implement the policy, and I am doing that in the best way that I think at this point. If it's the will of the board for me to do something else, then the will of the board needs to let me know. But at this point, I'm implementing the policy to my best knowledge and ability in the way I see is best. And so if it's the will of the board for me to do something else, then I would like to know if it's the will of the board to be able to let me know that.
personally, I'm comfortable with your, I mean, I can speak for myself. I can't speak for the whole board. I'm just running the meeting here, but personally, I'm comfortable with your approach, being that it's a temporary matter of practically implementing what we asked you to do. And I guess we need to,
I mean,
anyone else is
yeah.
welcome to weigh in.
I mean, I'm okay to give you the days and weeks that you need to put the processes in place. If it would go beyond that, then I think we would need to revisit. So,
Sure.
you know,
Yep.
because we've always been assured that there's minimal content that would need to be pulled. That's always been the assurance that we've gotten, and so if that's not true, then I think there would be different conversations that would need to be had. So I'm perfectly fine to give you and the administrators time to do this.
And in the same vein, if you choose to open earlier and work through as you go, I'm personally fine with that as well.
I just think, like, we didn't know it was going to be closed, and there's obviously been a lot of misinformation, like it's closed forever, they're never reopening it, you know. And it would be helpful to say, look, you know, the administration decided this was the best way to go, it's going to be a very short time, and, you know, the library, we didn't want to make the librarian work over the summer. So that helps, but, you know, we'd all prefer the library be open as soon as possible.
All right, so I'm just kind of recapping here. Board has not closed the library indefinitely. Whatever happens is temporary, and to allow for administrative processes to happen. Teachers are allowed to have classroom libraries. If their libraries contain content that meets these definitions, they got to get a parent thumbs up before they provide that material to a student. No books are being removed from the library, like by virtue of this policy. Only certain books are being segregated that they require a parent thumbs up prior to access.
Audra, one, I think maybe perhaps misspoke. I think you said that the board has not closed the library indefinitely. In reality, the board has not closed the library at all. So,
Right.
The board has not closed the library. The library is also not just closed indefinitely. The library is, there's a delayed opening for the library so they can work through processes. With that, did anyone receive any other correspondence about any other matters that they want to bring up? Okay. Then I am going to go ahead and move on to public input, which is different than open communication tonight. So give us a second here. We have a public input regarding the use of federal grant funds. Is this for me or for you?
I can do it.
Okay.
So this is an annual item that each school district that receives federal grants has to do. So again, we receive federal grants through the Ohio Department of Education via the Federal Department of Education and the federal government. And so this involves monies for IDAB, which is Individual with Disabilities Education Improvement Act, the Early Childhood Special Education Act, Title I funds for supplemental initiatives, teacher salaries for reading intervention, Title IIA funds for targeted professional development, Title IVA funds, well-rounded education initiatives, health and safety of students, technology. And so it's a requirement for us to gather public input on any of these funds, but to know that also these funds don't pay at even close to what we spend on special education or reading intervention or professional development. These are just small pieces of what we fund through the school district. So these are funds that we have gotten for many years, as do many other school districts, and so we have things that we are spending these things and monies on, but again, we are open for public input on these, so you can provide that information to me or to Ms. Gann, our Director of Curriculum and Gifted.
And
That's it.
that
That's
period
just-
of comment is open until August 31st.
August 31st, yep.
All right. Thank you. All right. That brings us to our open communication period. At this time, the Board of Education welcomes your input. If you wish to address the board, please sign in, or folks already have signed in on the sheet provided. When called upon, please share your name, address, and any group affiliation you hold, if that's relevant. You have 5 minutes for comments, which should be directed toward the presiding officer, which unfortunately for all of you is me this evening. This time is for the board to listen and absorb. It's not really a time to create dialogue. We want to ensure that as many folks who came to speak tonight as possible have the opportunity to address the board. And we do this so we can make sure each speaker is treated equally and fairly. The entire policy regarding this is you can find on our website, Board Policy 0169.1. And with that, Meredith Brennick. It is right here. If you missed it, you're welcome to it. Or actually, if you would just give Kevin your name, or
Have her sign it.
huh? Go ahead.
We have the information. You want to call the first person?
Meredith Brenniger, you were first. I'll let you go ahead and get started.
All right, well, my name is Meredith Brenniger, and I live in Bellbrook, and as always, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'll focus on 2 topics. The first one's probably not what you were expecting. I wanted to ask for size-inclusive desks. I recently attended the high school open house, and I noticed that most of the desks were attached to chairs and were on the small side. I saw more than one parent struggle to squeeze into them. I have to imagine there are a number of high school students who might similarly struggle due to living in larger bodies. Having chairs that fit is something many of us take for granted. No student should have to feel physically squeezed into a desk and mentally self-conscious about this. And I know you're seeking input on federal funds with a deadline of August 31st. I'm not sure if there's any way we could finagle any money for this purpose. Maybe not, if it doesn't even cover our expenses. But maybe keep an eye out for other grants that might be able to do this. I suspect it's because the high school's older, maybe. And I know my daughter said she does not like them, not because of size, but she's a fidgeter and moves, and she's like, I can't move in those desks. So anyway, so that was my starting point. Secondly, I do want to talk about books in the library. And to answer your question, Kevin, why now? It's because about 2 days ago, or maybe at the open house, which just happened, I received from my child's high school ELA teacher information about this, and that all independent reading would need to be supplied by the student, either bought in a store or checked out at a public library. And it seems that all high school ELA teachers have removed their classroom libraries due to the tedious nature of Board Policy 5780. Now, I can't imagine burning teachers to somehow track who's opting in and out when they just really want kids to look at books in their room and feel inspired to read. You know, if I were a teacher in this community, seeing some of the comments and I've read, I'd be offended that the community thinks that I'm peddling porn or that I'm indoctrinating students because I have books with non-binary or trans characters on my shelves. Our teachers often spend their own money to purchase classroom books and make thoughtful decisions about what is both developmentally appropriate and likely to be engaging for students. Our librarians do the same. But now the library is closed until further notice, and parents have been asked to sign a form acknowledging this information. Teachers have also been asked to sign a form saying they will be compliant with this policy, which that seems to be a first with board policies that I'm aware of. As an aside, I want to state that my personal belief that the pushback against sexual content is a red herring. Sure, most of us can agree that we don't want graphic sexual acts in the kindergarten curriculum, but this feels like a deflection and obfuscates the desire to censor books about the lived experience of LGBTQ youth. Now, I know that the board and I don't always see eye to eye, but I hope that we can agree this is an unfortunate consequence, and one I hope that was unintended on your part, and I think it was unintended. Now, yes, some portion of this board policy was prompted by a change in state law, but the change is only applied to removing classroom instruction with sexuality content and gender ideology from grades K to 3. Neighboring districts have had to do very little as a result, since I don't think there is as much or any teaching or so-called indoctrination about sexual concepts and gender as has been popularly suggested. I had a teacher put it this way: if I had the power to indoctrinate students, I'd make sure they always did their homework and did extra reading for fun. But I digress, right? Ohio law says nothing about school libraries. So the board's decision to stray from this new Ohio law back in April seems to have resulted in placing an undue burden on teachers and librarians and shrunk our students' access to all books, not just those with sexuality content. Now, first, they modified the language of the law, which was about oral and written instruction with sexuality content in the classroom setting. Bellbrook removed the word classroom and added books to the list of materials. Some citizens feared this meant they were going to target classroom and school libraries in addition to classroom teachings, and it turns out we were right. I mean, Jeff and I are probably one of the few people that spoke on this topic, but I've been following this closely since April. 2, they upped the minimum grade permitting sexual content from 4th to 9th. And 3, they made the policy at the high school an opt-in instead of opt-out. And this is what has really put an undue strain on our librarians who've been tasked with identifying whether every single material in the library contains sexuality content, and why the library is closed and classroom libraries have been pulled. Now, my hope is that we can see past our differences and come up with a solution that minimizes work on our educators, maximizes access to books for all students, and honors parent choice. The simplest solution would be to have all materials at the high school level be accessible, and if parents want to opt out of any books they feel are inappropriate, they may, whether for violence or sex or any reason at all. The onus would be on the parents, which is probably how it should be, since parents will differ on what works and doesn't work for their kids. I hope you will listen to public comments tonight with sincerity. Never underestimate the power of speaking up. I mean, Bellbrook might finally allow chickens because a few concerned citizens spoke up with reasonable suggestions. And Kevin, I know you know what it's like to speak to the township trustees and feel utterly unheard. So I hope you all hear us tonight and will work with us to improve this situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Elise Tomlinson, you're up.
Okay, so first I want to say, Mr. Price, yes, we need libraries open now, and we'll figure things out. And I really appreciate Mrs. Anderson, especially as an ELA teacher yourself, that you want to figure out how to get books into kids' hands. And I just really, I want to say that first. So first of all, okay, I want to tell you guys something funny that you may not know about me. I had a Ohio Humanities grant to create a lexicon of sexual words to update it for ASL interpretation. Because with language, like, you don't get to pick, it's language. So if you do need someone with history of assembling a bunch of sexual acts, and you guys get to decide what is and is not appropriate, I got you. So, the other thing, funny thing I want to say while listening to a mom read a Nancy Drew book to her daughter, very wholesome, is that Nancy Drew has a best friend who describes herself as a tomboy and wants to be called George. Yeah. So, like, it's a lot on our teachers, and you know I'm pro-teacher, and you also know I'm pro-military student. And when I heard what was happening, the first thing I did was I called the base to be like, what do we do? Like, is this okay? Is this acceptable? Because military children have certain rights when it comes to education that everyone should have, but it does pertain to military students, and it's legally binding. And they had no idea. So Mr. Price, honest, I just heard about this. The base just heard about it. They're going to, they're streaming tonight. It was just too late notice for someone to come and represent the base school liaison. But they're contacting the state, and they're contacting to get instructions from other base entities so that we can make sure that students get educated. So I want to talk quickly, because I have 5 minutes and I know lots of people want to say, about the rights of military children to a good education. And it started in the 50s when schools in the South did not want to provide good education to Black Americans, to Black service members, and that's when it started. And that's why we have Dodd schools in the South, and still do, unfortunately. And that's why we have, that's why now the law has just been for, what was it called? Open enrollment. So, military-connected students can go to any school in the area, especially if that school provides things that Bellbrook does not. And what I heard yesterday about another project for military children is that the federal funds that military children bring go to the gaining school, not to us. So we're about to lose money because parents want their children well educated, which we can all agree on. The other thing I wanted to say is that due to compact, so National Compact, military-connected children are due at the gaining base area school what they had at the previous school. So if they had, say, free kindergarten, there. They have to get free kindergarten here. And I especially started thinking about the kids on 504 plans and IEPs whose sending school had them in the library. Now, how are we going to do that at this school if we don't have a library? So now we put ourselves not just in an ethical problem, not educating our military-connected students, but we have some legal funnies. And I'm going to the JAG on Tuesday to ask what is going on. Am I speaking out of turn, or is there something here that we should probably back away from? Finally, because I contacted the base, and they're like required to advocate for military-connected children, we have kind of a PR problem too. Because I know a lot of people are watching, a lot of people are coming here. I would have come earlier, but I'm still recovering some breast cancer-connected things, and so that's why I wasn't here. But I talked afterward, and I asked some of you guys, like, what is this? Because I think it's dumb. But now that I see what's happening with the military-connected children, you guys, this is so dumb. Like, but easily fixed, because in that board meeting, I understand that I say we because I like being part of Bellbrook-Sugarcreek, and I volunteer with a grant thing, decided to go over and above what the law said. But by doing that, we created a ton more work for ourselves. We overstepped the law, and then we made things difficult. So because there's quorum, we could just decide to follow the law as the law is written, not add any other stuff to it, and then we can all just go home happy and go to Dairy Shed. And I think that's exactly what we should do. And thank you for listening to me always. And hooray, military kids.
Jeff Roush, you're up.
My name is Jeff Rush, for those who don't know me, also for those who do, still. My younger kid has just graduated, so I'm now officially a community member and parent of alumni. It's very exciting. My Michigan-loving heart is sending my kid to Ohio State. It hurts, but we'll live. I had a piece written out, which is unusual for me, for those who know me. But I think I'd rather be responsive to what I'm hearing. It's well written, excoriates you guys a little bit, but in a fun way. I want to kind of take a different tack here. The issues with the book policy came because you did something you didn't have to do. The state law does not require anything about school materials other than classroom instruction. There didn't have to be any of this. And Kevin, I'm not here to stir the pot, but rather to acknowledge your point that this isn't written in concrete, this can be changed, and I would like to give that some thought. But unfortunately, I think a lot of the anti-book and book restricting policies, I won't call it banning, it's just keeping them from kids, but a lot of those policies are being pushed by groups who are working decidedly against public education. The Moms for Liberty is funded by a lot of the school voucher pushing organizations and leaders. It's something worth thinking about. The same groups who are pushing for these above and beyond policies, the kinds of policies that infringe on the First Amendment rights of students, are being pushed by people who don't want kids going to this school. And to me, that is something worth thinking about and something worth considering. I also want to point out at the discussion about this, which I think was helpful, that among you guys, made it clear that although you feel like the policy was hashed out, talked out, defined really well, you guys don't all know what it means in terms of implementation. And some of this, I think, was foreseeable because when it comes to the gender ideology, which is a ham-fisted shove into sexuality content, let's just Call it like it is. But the state did that. But by forcing this into the book issue, suddenly you're in that position of, wait a minute, does Nancy Drew have a character who might be transgender? It's not a simple thing to do. It's not a simple thing to implement. And in that situation, it's hard to expect teachers to feel completely safe about what they're offering, for the libraries to be ready to open. And so I empathize with Dr. Kozat here. I also think, as Kevin said, the library should be open. There's no reason it shouldn't be based on what parents are signing, based on any of that. So I feel like that is important. The last thing that I want to say about this, and this is where I make up words to get to the last thing in my head that I want to talk about. We don't really have a good sense, I don't think, about who adjudicates this. If a parent raises a concern and says, hey, Teacher Smith or Librarian Jones, I feel like this book offends my idea of what private sexual conduct is. Does that mean the teacher's in trouble? Does that mean the book's automatically out? How does that get dealt with? I feel like a lot of the how is missing from the policy. So yes, I think it's a dumb policy. I don't think that the books should be excluded at the high school level. I don't think that this should be an opt-in thing. I said all of this back in April, and I continue to stand by it. But if we're going to have the policy, then we need to figure out the how, and I encourage you to do so. Thank you.
Sir? Thank you, sir. Jenna Bowles.
Hi, my name is Jenna Bowles. For those of you who don't know me, I have 4 children in the district. I have a master's degree in library and information science, and I also professionally reviewed books for 8 years for School Library Journal. So I feel particularly qualified to speak on a review process for books. I'll echo the sentiments earlier that the parental rights policy is an overreach and actually probably has the opposite effect. It's every author's dream to be on a banned book list because that's an instant bestseller. So what we're doing is driving children to look for this type of content in an unsafer place, like online, where there aren't the same protections, there aren't the same publishers, high quality guidance for teachers and librarians. I also take issue with the insinuation that there is anything in any library that has not been professionally reviewed, because school librarians have small budgets. They are not going to risk any of their money on a book that has not been reviewed by a professional. So there's a difference between an expert opinion about a book and the age range and an opinion about an age range for a book. So publishers put an age range on a book to sell the book. So that's a marketing ploy. As book reviewers, that's not our concern. Our concern is whether or not the material is age appropriate, and believe it or not, private sexual acts are age appropriate for teenagers. That is how they learn things, and that is up to them and their parent, not us as a school system to decide. I think there is a very large gray area in the policy that we're acting like is very clear. So like private sexual acts there's a very wide spectrum. Romeo and Juliet would be out. So there are classics that we identify as like, we've all read that, we kind of understand, it's a little bit creepy. But then when there are newer books that usually feature people who are questioning their gender identity or who are LGBTQ, those are automatically popped up as containing explicit sexual content. So this is I could forward you my research, but it's a heavily researched topic, the difference between classics, how classics treat sex, and how modern books treat sex. It's just that they're not in the canon yet. So also, they're not written by white men. I think to speak on how we are going to support our librarian. To do this, it's a little bit silly to insinuate that it has to be closed because librarians are juggling collection development, assessing materials constantly while open. So that, I mean, it should never have been shut for this reason in the first place, but that's an ongoing collection development policy that happens all the time. But who, like we've discussed, who determines what happens to those books, those segregated but equal books for some kids to check out, but not other kids? Do they live in a special spot? Do they have a special sticker? How in the collection are they described? So there are a lot of details that we have not figured out because this policy was made in haste, despite much public explanation of the potential ramifications. So how will we support our librarians in assessing those materials? Unless there's a committee that is made up of experts who understand how to do that, it will not be a fair and equal assessment of the material. So I would also echo that the library should stay open, and any assessment of the materials needs to be very, very detailed, and to try and continue to identify any potential problems because it is vague, whether we like to think private sexual acts are vague or not. So I think really we've overstepped, despite a lot of obviously public opinion earlier in April speaking on the matter, but also now that we're in a situation we didn't really have to be in, and we're kind of jeopardizing all of our students' access to books now in an attempt to label books that a very small minority, 25%, feel like their children should not have access to. So Meredith said it would have been easier to do the reverse, an opt-in or opt-out, the way we have it stated now. I think we're all interested in just making sure that while we may not agree with the policy, that if we're going there, we're going to have to provide a lot more support to ensure that sexually explicit content applies to everything, all the classics included. So,
Wendy Dyer.
Hello, my name is Wendy Dyer. I live at 3813 Callaway Court in Bellbrook. I did not send kids through Bellbrook City School, Bellbrook-Sugarcreek School. My kids went through a school district up in the Summit County area, and the library was the life force of the school for my kids. It's where they went when they needed a book. It's where they went when they needed to research something. And guess what? My oldest graduated 10 years ago, and I know things are a whole lot different now than they were then. But it was also the place that they went when they needed to find somebody who had that weird fascination about comic books, or the weird fascination about puzzles, or, you know, my one kid was into woodworking of all things, so he went to the library for woodworking. It was an important place to them. And I understand that it is difficult to do two things at once, but we all do two things at once. And I don't really understand this whole policy. I don't know why the board chose to do it the way they did, but that's been done. But I think the library needs to be open tomorrow. And I want to know what you guys did to make sure that that would happen. You make it seem, you're saying you didn't know that this was going to happen. What funds did you allow for this summer to get it done? And as the previous speaker said, you know, they can do two things at once. So, you know, if need be, can you bring in an aide to deal with the students checking in and that kind of stuff? And allow the librarian to focus on implementing the policy. As you said yourself, so far 75% of the kids are, you know, 75% of the kids, their parents have opted in to allow their kids to do anything. Isn't it possible to just operate, and the 25% that are flagged, then if they come in and, I mean, the librarian can deal with that book at that time. If that kid comes and they have a book, and the librarian can deal with it on a one-on-one basis. That book is, oh, well, I know that, oh, let me look that up. You know, as she said, there are experts who have already, you know, so it isn't, some of it's a matter of looking at it. I think you need to find a way to have the library open. To not have it open the first day of school, again, it's been 10 years since, well, 9 years since my youngest graduated, and I know things have changed so much. But the library is, you know, it's like the cafeteria. It is part of the lifeblood of where certain groups of kids get together. And if you don't have that open the first week of school, the second week of school, then, you know, it's a mix. I'm not an educational expert, but the dynamics of things when they're not open right away always changes the dynamic for the entire year. And so I think it's sad. And again, I really would like to know what you, as a board, did to make it, I mean, to provide funding so this could have been done over the summer. What was your, I understand that it's Mr. You know, Cozad's responsibility to implement things, but what did you give to him so that he could implement it?
Okay, forgive me, I'm reading here. Is this Andy or Audie Weissman? I'm sorry.
Hello. My name is Andy Wiseman. I am a parent of 2 high schoolers, and I live here in Bellbrook. My background is a degree in sociology with a concentration in learning and development of the human mind, body. Kevin, you said that you feel like our community knew the plan and saved up this outrage to posture and create a public issue. But that was a little unsettling because none of us knew that the library would be closed on the first day of school. Not even you all. I mean, Mr. Cozad did, but the rest of you didn't. Even today, you're not sure when the library will reopen. How would we know if you don't know? Last spring, you said you wouldn't ban any books. So people kind of calmed down, even though we all showed up in April. Many more than this showed up in April. Part of the problem is that when we do speak out, you guys are not listening. And I hate to say that because I know quite a few of you. I see your Facebook posts. I know the kind of people you seem to be. And you seem to be good, decent people. But when the community is talking to you, you're not listening. You continue to not listen. You don't listen about the policy. Audra, I see you kind of grin, but think about this. You didn't listen when we said don't put guns in our schools. You did. You didn't listen when we said don't remove LGBTQ+ from the policy on the anti-harassment policy. We were out here till midnight saying please don't do that. You did. So when we talked to you in April and said, hey, don't ban our books, we didn't wait till today to complain about it. We came here because we were shocked that you said you wouldn't ban the books, and you were right, you didn't. You just closed the library. That was a hell of a way to get around it, I guess. And true, you said it's not closed indefinitely. It's closed for days and weeks. What does that mean? We don't know what that means. No one knows what that means. Are our librarians getting paid for this time right now? These are librarians. Our librarians and our art teachers, plenty of our teachers, but especially our librarians. I hear this time and again when my kids were in elementary school, when they were in middle school, and when they're in high school. These teachers connect to these kids in ways that not all the teachers can. We're missing that. Our kids are missing it. Our teachers are missing it. The relationships that are being built in that library are bigger than just a book that might include somebody's transgender child or transgender character, which is very bothersome because all this morning, or this, not morning, but this whole entire beginning of this conversation, you guys kept saying sexual content. Well, let's not forget the gender ideology that's included in this, that you've included in this policy. What does that mean? Audrey, oh no, who was it? Yeah, Audrey, it was you. You said inherently sexual content, things you would not do on a park bench. Well, if you include gender ideology, are you saying LGBTQ plus people should not be on a park bench? Granted, that's dramatic, probably. Is it dramatic? Is it posturing? Perhaps it is. Then give me a definition. What's the definition? Because how are we supposed to put people in charge of deciding what that is when none of you were able to give us a definition? You just said, well, you know. No, we don't know. We don't know. And that's the whole problem. And you've said it too. I looked at your Facebook response where you said you did not expect this. Kevin said he did not expect this. And now everybody's saying, well, the board did it. And you guys are all going to say, no, the board didn't do it. But now you did do it. You might not have done it until today. But when Mr. Kozad said, hey, if the board's up for me changing this, let me know. Nobody said a thing. Why not? Why didn't you? Kevin, you said it. You started it out. But when we were happy and applauded you, you backed out real quick. Why? You were right. It's okay. We can come together on middle ground in some of these places. And the middle ground here is don't close the library for a million reasons. Hi to your teacher, you know. There's a million reasons, or at least a dozen, that we could come up with why we don't close the library on the first day. And I know you think it. I saw it on your Facebook post. Kevin, I know you think it. You said it out loud. I don't know how the three of you think it. But why don't you say, yeah, let's just open the library and go along with the caveat that we wrote in final forms, which, Ann, you said was a so we don't get sued in your Facebook post. And Kevin, you said a get out of jail free card. Use the card. Use the library card.
Greta Schumacher.
Hi everyone, my name is Greta Schumacher. I wish I had come to meetings earlier. I have been here for about 2.5 years now, and I specifically told my husband who got stationed at Wright-Patterson, we have to move to Bellbrook. I see they have really good schools. I always do my research. This is actually the richest school district my kids have ever been to. So I was very excited about all of this. And it's a wonderful school, and we love it. And you see the landings, you see all these communities pop up. And a lot of it is because of the schools. And people want to live here and want to send their kids here. However, seeing this, and maybe I should have been more informed, but seeing the library closed on my daughter's first day of freshman year is definitely not what I was expecting and not why we moved here. I want a good education for my kids. Everyone here, I'm sure, agrees. They want a good education for the kids. And that sometimes includes topics that are not, that people are maybe not comfortable with. And, you know, with me coming from a different country, I'm always asked, where's your accent from? You know, I moved here for my husband, but it's also, it gave me a different perspective. I lived in a small little town in Germany, and then went here. I lived all over the states, in different states, different school districts, and I've learned so much. I've met so many people, and you can't have a full education if you don't allow your kids to meet different people of all kinds of walks in life. It can be anyone who has two moms. It can be anyone who has two dads. It can be someone who's not sure who they are right now, because guess what? Teenagers are unsure. My daughter keeps asking me, I don't really know who I am at this point in time, and she knows who she is, and she knows she wants what she wants, but at the same time, you know, like these teenagers are not sure, am I an athletic girl? Am I the nerd? Am I, you know, there's so many things that they are confronted with. And many times in books, they can identify with a person. They can walk through these problems reading certain books. And they find like, oh yeah, I'm more like, you know, this girl who is athletic more than this girl, or I'm the math girl who is really smart in this part. You know, and it doesn't have to be gender all the time. I don't know why people keep throwing this around. You know, it's just like, as a teenager, you're confused. Once, you know, you want to be a good person, and I think that's what we need to teach our kids, that they can have access to all these books, and they can read about different lifestyles, different people, different races, different ideas, and only then can we understand the world and be a good person. And with that said, I really think the library needs to open, not just because of the books, but also because it was brought up earlier, it's a community place. Study halls, I heard, are usually done in the library. I'm not sure if that's 100% true. It is a teenager who told me that. But, you know, they have to be in the cafeteria now instead of in the library, where you can do homework much better, where you can focus on studying. And you're surrounded by all these books and all these people who wrote books. And, you know, and with that, it would be really important to give them the opportunity. If you need more time, maybe you can hire someone, like it was brought up, who can help with all of this. But really, the easiest thing for me would be, as a parent, when I read the final forms, instead of opting in, you can opt out. Because we, as parents, are so busy sometimes. It's really hard to see all these forms and opt in, and then we have kids here and medical forms and this stuff, and you know, it's like a lot to read. So if you can opt out because you're concerned, that makes sense to me. If you bring home a book that you don't want your kids, or your kid brings home a book and you don't want the child to read this, just opt out. And also, I'm wondering, these parents who were super concerned about, you know, like, why we need to opt in, or I don't want any of this content. I'm wondering, like, do they really do that with their kids' phones? Do they know what the kid is looking at? Because in books, it's much less in your face than it is online. And with that said, I'm hoping we can bring up this topic again and maybe change the wording to opt out instead of opt in. And then with that, I think we can save all the headache about like, oh, these books need to be looked at again, because as it was said earlier too, there is an age range, and people do look closely at why it's meant to be for under 10 or for 16 up. And therefore, I think we need to stand with that and give our kids the opportunity to travel the world and life through books.
Thank you. And I have one final one, and it's Mohammed, and I'm sorry, the last name is Qureshi. I'm sorry, the squished.
Hi, my name is Mohammed Qureshi. I have 3 children in the Bellbrook School District, a first grader, a fourth grader, and a seventh grader. I want to begin by addressing Mr. Price's comment about community organization. I was not aware that this was going on. Had I known I'd be speaking publicly, I would have shaved this morning. I'm here because I came to learn what was happening and to assuage my concerns. But that's not what's happened here today. I'm actually more concerned now. I think to address Dr. Kozat's comment, I would say that it's possible to chop onions with an axe, but a kitchen knife makes a better tool. So I think you have implemented a policy in the broadest way possible. And I have questions about, is the library actually going to be open? Are librarians expected to go through every single page and sort through the books? I have all these questions. And I think part of the issue with the miscommunication is that there hasn't been any communication. I found this out because my 7th grader came home upset because there were changes at the middle school about the library, and she was upset that now they wouldn't have a place to socialize while, you know, browsing or reading books. And that's where I learned of it. So then I had to text other parents, and they had to ask their children what was going on, and that's the way I found out about it. And later I found out there was a Facebook post. So I think a lot could be, the communication could be a lot better about what's actually happening. And yes, I should have been more aware of what was happening back in April. I wasn't, but then at the same time, I saw the form, I signed the form, assuming that it would be a policy on a child-by-child basis, where if the child opted in, it would be fine. If they opted out, then they would not be allowed to check out or, you know, look at these books without prior parental approval. Had I known this was going to be happening, then yes, I would have been vocal a lot sooner. So, thank you.
All right, that brings us to the end of open communication period. Thank you all for sharing your thoughts. And that brings us to Mr. Mark Carrera, who is the SCA president.
I would like to thank the board and Dr. Kozat for the opportunity to speak tonight. I am going to talk a little bit about the Parents' Bill of Rights, but I'm going to wait to do that because a lot of it's come up. I had planned on just talking about the beginning of the school year, but I think this is dominated in the beginning of the school year. So today was the first day. I'm sorry if my voice is a little scratchy. I actually had to call attendance for 280 students because I have 122 in a study hall, which I share with other people, but I have the loudest voice. And then I have, like I said, 158 of my own students in class. It's a great start. You know, I will tell you that going into the summer, I am the kind of teacher that is excited. Like, I'm excited to come back. I'm ready for it. Like, middle of July, I start getting a little antsy. And so I'm ready to come back personally. But it's really the kids that really make that happen. And I hate to be like this, but it really is the adults that make it less enjoyable. The adults in a variety of ways. The kids are the ones that we're there for, right? And so as we go forward this year, I know we're going to have a great school year, and I hope that we work through this. And I really hope that the school board begins to listen to outside influences. I have been to many of these meetings. The meeting where the school board approved the policy for the armed response team, there was a group of people there that I have never seen before or since. When you ratified this policy, it was the same thing. I've been in meetings where I heard it said, the 5 of us are pretty much of the same mindset. That insulation is a problem. Like, you should be listening to other people outside of you. I went to a board meeting where one of the board members said they talked to a representative as they were talking about clawing back money from us, and they didn't get anywhere with that, but they were really happy with the Parents' Bill of Rights. And I think, like, that should not be the priority of the school district. The school district, the priority of, in my opinion, and I apologize, you should be worried about the next levy, because before you know it, that's going to be happening. And I mean, these kind of things are divisive. Mr. Price, I appreciate your comments about the community, but I think they're highly inappropriate to be saying that. I mean, the same people have been here almost all the time. They're always speaking against this. I never feel like they're listened to, and I don't really feel like I've been heard. We had a meeting of the SEA. When we did meet with that, we advocated for the opt-out. Is that right? Yes, we advocated for the opt-out, not the opt-in. We weren't listened to. There were several times where we discussed things we were not listened to. I don't know that administrators are listened to. I sincerely doubt it, but I'm not positive. I'm not in those meetings. But I know that I don't feel heard. I know that I was in a room full of teachers and counselors, and they didn't feel heard. And I guess, like, one of the last things to kind of finish off with is, if you feel that teachers removing their classroom libraries is making you look bad, or that the library of the school makes you look bad, it really isn't. It's your own actions and your policy that is making you look bad, not the actions of teachers. Teachers have families, they have livelihoods. They don't know the repercussions of this. I don't know the repercussions of this. In the policy, several stages, the school board is a part of the equation, which, as a union person, blows my mind. If anyone is ever held accountable, it will not happen because the school board doesn't run the district. Dr. Kozad runs the district. You guys should advise him instead of just always making your opinions reality for us.
All right, that brings us to the superintendent's report.
So this is Superintendent's Report, new business. This will be a consent agenda, A, B, and C. So certificated license, employment, resignation, leave of absence, supplemental duty, people activity. I'm sorry. And support staff, employment, resignation, leave of absence, and substitute employment. Once I can go in a little bit more detail. Once I get it first and second. Once I get first and second, yep, thank you. Second?
I'll second that. It's Dr. Pryor and Mrs. Anderson.
All right, so some of these are some minor corrections as we try to, as we get paperwork in and so forth and filling out some supplemental duty positions. Also some final hiring. Happy to report that we're fully staffed for the school year with the hard work of administrators, especially at the last minute, or not the last couple of weeks here, as we had some openings that were there, and they worked extremely hard to be able to fill those openings, especially in the special needs assistance area, which is a difficult area to fill, and also some bus driver positions, and then also trying to continue increasing our pool of substitutes.
So anyone have questions? Okay, call the roll on the consent agenda.
Dr. Pryor,
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Dawn,
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes.
4 yeses.
Thank you. All right, 7A, overnight trips, athletics. So recommend approval of the following BHS athletic overnight activities: boys cross country to Tiffin and boys golf to Lexington, Ohio.
So moved.
Second?
Questions?
Again, these are pretty typical trips that these two teams make on a yearly basis.
Go ahead, call the roll.
Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Dawn,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Dr. Pryor.
Yes.
4 yeses.
Items for discussion and information, so Student Wellness and Success Fund. So this is for items information only. We are required to inform the board of this. This is a state grant that we received, and it was for $133,000, $586.07. And so we utilize these funds for working towards or being applied to, it doesn't cover all the costs, applied to of 8 full-time equivalent days of mental health counselors. We contract with the Greene County Educational Service Center for 8 full-time equivalent days of mental health counselors. These folks are at all of our buildings and provide mental health supports for our students.
What does that mean, 8 full-time equivalent days?
So we have 3 people that kind of split that up because a few of them are in other school districts, and so that's one of the pieces that when we work with ESC, that's one of the benefits. We're able to contract just for a few days here or there, and so that's 3 individuals
per
for
week.
8. Yeah, so like
And that's the
two
piece.
people are at one building for a day, so that's 2 full-time equivalent for 1 day.
8 days per week.
Yeah, 8 days per
8
week.
person days per week.
Per,
Yeah, I just didn't, I thought 8 full-time equivalent days for the entire year.
No, no,
for
no, per week, I'm
133,000, I got the wrong job,
No.
so. Yeah.
no, it's per week. That's for three counselors that we contract with ESC. They have 8 days that they give us, contract with us
Okay.
from the ESC for mental health counseling. Yeah. And again, it is more than $133,000. Yeah. So, And again, that's not something you have to prove, that's just something we have to say that we provided that information to the board at a board meeting. Again, that's up from a few years ago, we were at five days, so we've upped that to 8 days, past couple years. That's it.
All right, and that brings us to the end of our agenda tonight. A couple of things I want to say before we go. There were a few things that were, I said, again, we don't really dialogue with the podium, but there were some things that were requested or things that speakers said were unclear, one of which was the definition of gender ideology. That is called, gender ideology is defined in the policy. It's also defined on the top of final forms. The definition of gender ideology, as is in the policy, is the concept that people can be of a gender or have a gender identity that does not correspond to their biological sex. So nothing in that definition about the L, the B, or the L, the G, or the B of LGBT, and it's really just nothing that states that someone can be of a sex different than, or of a gender other than, or different than what they were born. So that is defined in the policy. It was also on the final forms, so I wanted to clear that up. Just nothing, we do hear you. I want to just speak from the heart and saying, I do think everyone in here has a line of things that, whether they are on the internet or whether they are in printed form and bound in a book, everyone here has a line as to what we should hand a child, all right? And maybe all of our lines are different, and I do think that line has changed over time. What was acceptable 10, 20, 30 years ago to hand to a child has changed, and we're grappling with that, all right? And we will probably continue to grapple with that. No different than what we were used to seeing or what we were comfortable seeing on television 10, 20, 30 years ago has changed over time, right? And I'm speaking just for myself personally, I want to make sure that we are giving parents the opportunity when the topics come up that that families tend to handle differently, or that parents place importance on having these conversations with their children. I want to make sure that we as a district act conservatively, and I don't mean politically conservatively. I mean that we hold back to allow parents to address those issues prior to the school addressing them with their kids, right? I want a parent to have the opportunity to introduce the concept of sex and all the other things that are tricky topics. I want parents the opportunity to do that prior to students accessing them here, all right? And at some point in time, if a parent opts not to have those conversations, yes, we all are, you find those out in the world. But in general, we all have a line. I don't think there's anyone in here that says that our school library should contain absolutely any book, that all books are off limits, right? And so we are going to continue to grapple with where that line is. I haven't had anyone disagree with the fact that we regulate our school internet. I haven't had anyone disagree with that we ask for parent permission when we show movies. I haven't had anyone come to us and really want all that explicit content in the music that we share. Books, in my mind, are not incredibly different from that, and we all have a line. With that, I will.
I got a
unless
couple
somebody else
comments
has
real
something,
quick.
I would take a, go ahead.
Yes, so I appreciate your comments. Audra, I'm glad you clarified that the definitions do exist. And the reason that I think the board took this on was because the state left those definitions out. And I recall some folks coming out and saying, hey, define that. And I think some of those people that requested that are here tonight, that are not necessarily in agreement with our policy, but they're saying, look, that's not defined. So I think it's fair and proper that we went through and defined those things because the state law did not. One of the things I often get a little bit frustrated with, and I hear it frequently referenced and heard it a few times tonight, was, trust the professionals. It's not your job as a board member to question the professionals. And some of you have heard this before, but bear with me. We're adults in public here. So, okay, let's look at the American Library Association, 2020. ALA, Book of the Year, Genderqueer, for ages 12 to 19. It, with animation, depicts oral sex with a dildo between teenagers. So what's the line here? I don't know. But it's not just saying defer to our media specialists, defer to our librarians, because they have the credentials. Because if the ALA doesn't have it right, and I'd argue they don't, how can I always blindly trust our professionals? So I think it's so fitting that we did come up with definitions. Audrey, I think yours of, I don't think they would be something we'd want to see on a park bench in downtown Bellbrook. So I think the definitions are well worded. If you have ideas for them, we're willing to work on those. But just what it's worth.
I also want to say, most of us did not know the library was going to be closed at all. In May, I sent a list of the low-hanging fruit, shall we say, about 21 books in the high school library, real obvious, and I sent it to Dr. Kozad and said, if we just section off these right now, then we can work on it, and we add the, word the final form so it's not all complete, then we can, slowly work through this during the year. Now, I totally understand Dr. Kozad saying, you know what, it'd be a lot easier for her if she could focus on that full-time for a week or two and do a great job. And I'm sure none of us, I'm sure he didn't have any idea it would, upset the community this much. And he even mentioned earlier, hardly anyone goes to the library the first 2 weeks, so no one realized that that would be so upsetting. I do think it's still very important to have parental permission. There's really no difference between opt-in and opt-out. You still have to know the that's what our form says. You can opt in or you can opt out. And you have to know the basic content of the books to know, okay, this child is opt-outed. You have to know what's in the books. Well,
All right.
But the
Does
parents have to know what's in there before we can do that.
All right.
well,
And we can access that. They
So
can access
anyway,
that now.
I think it's very important to give parents, for her parents to be able to select. Like, I don't want my 14-year-old son reading a book with anal sex. I just don't. I know a lot of you are fine with that, but that wouldn't be appropriate for me. So I would, I don't want him to have full access. But I don't know what's in. Again, I really thought there were about, the 21 books I said that would take 5 minutes, one afternoon to section off. So I don't know if there's just so much more in there. But I do ask Dr. Kozad to, as soon as possible, even if, we're still in progress, to get the library open, since people, are obviously very upset about it. We all love the library. We want our kids to be happy there. And we didn't, want it, we certainly didn't want it to be closed. So, but I understand why you thought, well, that would make it simpler. So.
Also, I said it several times, but apparently it was missed because it came up during comments. I found out yesterday from the community, from parents emailing me, that the library would be closed today. So I did not know. And to be very clear, I was saying the library should be open tomorrow. Very clear. What else can I say? And that's all I got to say tonight. Thank you.
And, as a teacher myself, I find that in my personal experience, the best environment is when a teacher and a parent coexist and are on the same team. And so I supported this policy because it brought parents to the table. Now, you can say opt-in, opt-out, whatever, but a parent, you all said you're busy. We're all busy. I have 4 kids. I have 1 kid that are in the district. I have 1 kid in each building. Those final forms get messy, they get confusing, and I get that. But just because I may have missed it, not consenting to that, just because I missed it, that's not consent. I wanted to make sure parents knew, hey, this is what I'm consenting to, and I am at the table. I'm agreeing with you, it's fine. But I think that we have to bring parents to the table. We have to leave a spot for them at the table, because otherwise, people can make assumptions about what's going on. And if we,
Table for the 75% or the 25%?
Okay, this isn't the time for that.
it's for whoever wants to be there.
Okay, schedule it. Let's go.
I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second.
All right, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Dawn,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Dr. Pryor,
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson.
Yes.
4 yeses.
All right, we are adjourned at